So in part one of my remarks, I wanted to suggest that the concept of higher law, which governs American public polity, can be seen as having its roots in the Protestant Reformation, particularly the Radical Reformation. But there's a second element to this higher law, this idea of the law of nature. And that the heritage for this belief in the higher law of nature probably stems to the Enlightenment. The idea of a law of nature to which human life must conform received active support in America, particularly drawing upon our intellectual tradition of Scottish philosophy, or what is called common sense rationalism. The rationalism of that intellectual tradition turned easily toward this concept of natural law, and it was perhaps one of the reasons that enlightened beliefs were so readily accepted in the colonies and continued to be held to into the 19th century. Framed in the political rhetoric of the nation's foundation, higher law became the law under which a god of nature had given unalienable rights to individuals. Now you're going to recognize language there from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That law of nature was understood as absolute and fundamental. It became the basis for our separation from England. It is enshrined not only in the words of the Declaration of Independence, but also the Constitution. According to American patriotic reasoning, political states and their laws must exist as reflections in specific human situations of a higher law of nature. Otherwise, one could resist the laws of the state. The states sought to enact laws that reflected this higher law of nature. If the laws didn't reflect the higher law of nature, then resistance was enjoined. Practically speaking, Americans made use of various versions of the higher law in order to justify the acquisition of territory from Native Americans. And that's really where I wanted to push these remarks this week. They used this concept of higher law, and particularly the law of nature, to justify taking of lands from Native Americans. Legitimation for the conquest of Native American lands was based on the distinction between civilized and savage peoples. Savages, by definition, could not be fully human and therefore could not be civilized. They did not comport with the law of nature. So they thought that God required them to snatch the wilderness from Native American hands, and that it be given then to Christian peoples who could turn it into a new Garden of Eden, a Christian garden. President Andrew Jackson, who lived 1767 to 1845, justified the removal of southeastern Indians to lands further west based on a modified version of this argument from natural law, this argument about civilized and savage people, and the responsibility, according to the laws of nature, to cultivate these wilderness lands as a kind of new garden. White Americans, according to this kind of legitimation, would be as farmers, who would bring a higher state of civilization to those Indian lands. Indian people, because they were savages, retarded progress. So the legitimation went. So they were removed west of the Mississippi River with the hope that they could perhaps at some later time be brought to share in the civilization that whites were going to bring to the territory they once occupied. So, to anticipate where I'm going at the end of the lectures that I'll be recording today, you move the Indians, the Native Americans, west of the Mississippi River. You cultivate the land that they once occupied. But once the Native Americans are removed, they become the locus, or the place to which you send missions in order to civilize the savages in the hope that in their new place they can make a better go of it than they had in, say, the southeastern part of the United States. All of this kind of activity is grounded in this notion of a higher law of nature, that somehow white people, white Christian people in America, have access to that in a way that Native Americans did not. This becomes wedded to a third element of higher law, which is an idea of progress, an idea of manifest destiny. And because of the length of each of these segments, I'll take that up in part 3 of my comments.